Hello Internet, I'm John Brill, and this is Accountability on the Local Level, Part 5, Maximizing Accountability. In this series, we have focused on making districts smaller and making counties smaller so as to increase accountability on the local level. But there are 3 more things that we can do on the local level that, when added to smaller districts, would further maximize accountability. The first thing, match ward lines to precinct lines. In my state, a voting precinct can have no more than 5,000 people, and I assume some number of states have similar precinct sizes. If the voters per ward were 5,000 or fewer, and if the precinct lines were used for ward lines, then, with a one-man campaign-friendly district, that would mean that the candidate for local office would only have one place to be on election day. This has massive beneficial effects for election day, both for the voters and for the local candidates. Most voters never meet their locally elected officials, but when your precinct is the district, then the candidate only has one polling location to be at on election day. In such a situation, every voter who goes to the polls will have the opportunity to meet and talk with every single candidate. If the candidate has to campaign in a district of even just 2 precincts, then they would naturally want to spend half of their day at one precinct and half of their day at the other. They would necessarily miss being able to interact with half of the active voters in their district. Most local districts have way more precincts than that, so you are not likely to see a local candidate when you go to the polls in those larger districts. Whereas when the precinct lines are matched to ward lines, the candidate will have the opportunity to meet and talk with 100% of the active voters in his district, and the voters will be able to meet and talk with 100% of the candidates in their ward. This is win-win for both candidates and voters. And it also makes the one-man campaign even more beautiful because candidates would not have to worry about finding volunteers to hand out literature at other polling locations. The candidate can do all the necessary election day campaigning by himself. The second thing, 2-year terms. This makes a lot of sense from the candidate's perspective. Think about running for a district the size of a single precinct for 1 year so as to serve 2 years. That would be 3 years of your life. 3 years of a life is a significant time investment, but far less than the time commitment would be otherwise. Contrast that with larger districts, where smart candidates may prepare for 2, 5, 7, or even 10 years, so as to have the resources and networks necessary to run in those larger districts for a 4-year term. Larger districts can represent a minimum of a 7-year investment for many successful candidates. What is going to be easier for a candidate to both prepare for and walk away from? 3 years or 7+? The greater the amount of time that a candidate invests in preparing for office, attaining office, and holding it, the harder it will be for that candidate to easily walk away from office. Those years spent preparing to run for office, running for office, and holding the office could have been years where he put his energies towards other things such as family and business opportunities. That represents a massive opportunity cost. Having already made so many sacrifices to attain that office, all too many office holders can't bring themselves to leave. The more years a candidate has had to sacrifice to be able to mount a run and the more years they have had to sacrifice for each term, the greater their general level of desperation for shortcuts to prevent their sacrifice from being, quote-unquote, wasted. With small districts and short terms, there is a vastly smaller opportunity cost associated with running for office. This lower opportunity cost would make running for office more broadly accessible to a wider percentage of the population. For those who get into office, they would be a lot less desperate to stay there. I think this creates a far better environment of incentives for people to run for local office and for them to be able to leave local office. And wouldn't that all be a good thing? From the citizen's perspective, it makes their local office holder more accountable. Making district sizes smaller, while simultaneously making it easier for incumbents to stay in touch with their district, while also making it easier for incumbents who fail to represent their constituents to be removed, all of this creates a more organic feedback loop between citizens and their local government, and I think it is very much a win-win for all concerned. The third thing, instant runoff voting. There are a lot of other videos that explain both first past the post, which is how most elections in America are run, and instant runoff voting. Up above and in the description below, I have a link to a video by CGP Grey that explains both of those in detail. Briefly, in first past the post, whoever gets the most votes wins. It sounds fair, but isn't. With instant runoff voting, if no one candidate receives 50% plus 1 of the vote, then the candidate who received the least number of votes is dropped, and the vote is retallied with those voters' next preference. This keeps happening until one candidate receives the majority of the vote. There is a lot of angst that gets into our political system when there are 3 candidates and no one candidate wins the majority of the vote. If a candidate wins with 40% of the vote, then that means that 60% of the voters did not get what they want. They may rightly feel that if so-and-so wasn't in the race, then their candidate would have won. Do we want to have elections where the majority of voters feel cheated by the outcome? I don't think so, but that commonly occurs with our present method of elections. A lot of voters feel that those other candidates spoiled the race and view whoever won the election as less than legitimate. This can demotivate and discourage voters from participation in elections and increase hard feelings of those who continue to engage. Over the long haul, it builds up the feeling that the whole system is illegitimate, which contributes to the buildup of pressure within our political system. It should go without saying that we should want our election system to be viewed as legitimate by the people. Having instant runoff voting on the local level would help increase the legitimacy of local elections and thus alleviate pressure within the political system, because it would ensure that whoever is elected was a choice of the majority of the district. Voters being better able to feel that their candidate had a fair shake would be a good thing, and that would increase the legitimacy of the system. Those are the 3 things: match ward lines to precinct lines, 2-year terms, and instant runoff voting. Those 3 things, when paired with making districts smaller, would, I think, maximize accountability on the local level. But now it is time for you to tell me what you think. What do you think about the combination of changes to local elections suggested in this series? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and if you like this, then click here to see more for Liberty.